Good morning. Ooh, there we go. We are awake. Good morning. Yeah, that's right. It's been a long couple days. We basically just finished moving like 5 minutes ago. So, but it's done. So I'm happy about that. We'll go over a few prayer requests. Just got this one from Mitch that Henry Van Wise, he's a former member. His sister Katie has stage 4 breast cancer and is beginning treatment. So we'll be praying for her. And then, let's see, Tom's mom, Connie, is still undergoing tests for autoimmune conditions. So no word back yet on that. Carolyn Moore's daughter-in-law should have been induced today. I have not heard. Has anybody heard how that went?
They've not induced her yet.
They did not? Okay. Yeah, she's had a number of health problems. This is Cindy, Harold's wife. It's a little loud. And then the baby had been losing weight, and then they fixed that, and the baby was gaining weight again. So this is them planning on taking the baby early because she's not due till June. So that's for Cindy Wilson. Kelly's surgery, if you had not seen it on Facebook, went very well. The early report from Walt was about as good as it could have gone. Lungs were functioning. Last I checked, she was off sedation, off ECMO, and all the other organs are doing well with it. So that's kind of best of all worlds. Margot asked that we be praying for her husband's Dan on Sunday. He's having to go off his cancer medication. Thomas Todd has gallbladder removal surgery scheduled for tomorrow. And then Jason's pacemaker is tomorrow, also tomorrow. Okay. So that's 2 things we want to be praying for. Any others tonight that I'm leaving off or missing?
So I don't want you to put this on the email.
Okay, just tonight.
Yeah. I'm having a X-ray tomorrow in my lungs because I can't get over this bronchitis.
Okay.
It's been like over a month now. Having fun with coughing all the time.
Fun with coughing. Okay.
That's in the morning. I don't think that I'll have pneumonia or anything. It's just taking its time.
Okay. But just double check.
Just making sure.
Yeah. Good. All right. And that's tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Any others?
Waiting for the Lord is a struggle.
Waiting for the Lord?
It's a struggle.
It is a struggle.
I'm trying to get myself.
I understand. All right. Well, let's open with a prayer. Father, we're so thankful for all your blessings, all the things that we forget to thank you for, all the things that we get used to, that we grow cold to. Father, help us to always live with gratitude. to be thankful for our time here that we have, but also eager to receive the reward you've promised us. We're so grateful for that, for Jesus and for his gift on the cross, for the sacrifice and the mercy that covers us. And Lord, we ask your strength to serve you well, to imitate him, to follow his example to the best of our ability, both in our own personal lives and as a church. Father, please help us to be light in the darkness. And tonight, Lord, for those who are going through hard times, we ask your blessing over them, for Connie as she waits for results, for Cindy as she prepares to possibly have this baby. Father, keep her safe. We're so thankful, Lord, for Kelly's progress and the good news from her surgery, and ask that you'll continue to strengthen her and be with that family. For Dan, as he's coming off these meds, Father, be with him as he deals with this pain. And Father, for these surgeries tomorrow, for Thomas and for Jason Morrow, watch over them and help them both to go well, help them to heal quickly. Lord, we lift up to you Henry's sister, Katie, as she starts her breast cancer treatment, and also, Lord, Emily tonight, as she's got her lung x-ray tomorrow. We ask that you'll bless her, that it won't be anything serious, and that she'll recover quickly. And Lord, bless all of us as we do wait for you, as we are patient, as this life in this world goes up and down. Lord, help us to trust you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right. So back into, like we were talking about, sins and struggles, like we were talking about last few weeks. What we're going to talk about tonight is attending church. So y'all won. You're here. Good job. You made the struggle. But in the last few weeks, we've talked about laziness, anger, and then I think Scott was talking about cursing and pride last week. Is that right? I wasn't in those classes because I was helping Regina teach 2-year-olds, which is a struggle in itself. So I get to get out of that class and into this class tonight and next week. So I'm kind of happy about it. I'm just saying, it's not too bad to be in here. But we're going to talk about attending church and church attendance tonight, and that's one of those top 10 struggles that people had mentioned about how it sometimes is difficult to be here. And one of the things I always like to kind of get into a little bit is a little bit of statistics too, and it's a common problem, and it's been something, that neglecting the church in itself is something that can affect a lot of different things. So when you think about it, it's more than just attendance. It's also tithing and gifts, and it's neglecting to serve, because if you're not here, then how can you help serve in a way that's needed? And so there's all these other kind of things that spurn off of that. So we have to be careful about that. And if you probably know this verse, Hebrews 10:23 or 25, let us consider how to stimulate one another and love good deeds, not forsaking our own assembly together, as to the habit of some. So that's probably a pretty familiar verse to you. Don't forsake the assembly. We talked a lot about this during COVID, right? Where we were trying to make sure that we could get together. But what's happened in the last few years, even after COVID, is there's been a pretty consistent decline over attendance for all religious groups. So you can see there it says 3 in 10 people are attending a religious service every Sunday. So 30% of people who say that they are of some sort of religious significance. And interestingly a decade ago, it was, actually 2 decades, 20 years ago, it was 42% would attend a service on Sunday. So almost half. And so it's changed. And then 10 years ago, it's dropped to 38%, and now it's currently at 30%. So that's a pretty steep decline in my mind in the last 20 years. And why is that? I mean, there's lots of different reasons. Interestingly enough, when you start diving into those little details of these, Pew Research and things like that, these studies, I get geeked out on some of this stuff, but I like to talk about it. So some of this comes out of the studies reveal certain things, but I wanted to give you some background on this 3 out of 10. Actually, interestingly enough, the most observant of all religious groups are the Latter-day Saints, almost at 54% attendance, which is interesting. And then you've got the Protestants group, which we would be ranked under, if you want to put it that way, with about 40 to 44% attendance. And then you get down into the Muslims and Catholics at 38 and 33. So just some information there. I grew up Catholic, so I can kind of attest that the attendance, even when I was back 20 or 30 years ago, was very sparse. We would only go like once or twice a year. Easter and Christmas were the two prominent times, at least with our family. And that's, from my experience, I can kind of see that. So the bottom line on that really is that, again, 3 in 10 U.S. adults attend religious services, and it's been down from 42%. And then when you, again, kind of think about the details of that, it's like, well, why is that? Well, the younger generation is declining even more in their attendance than some of the older. Obviously, this type of age group going to be a little bit more consistent. But your 18 to 29-year-olds, which I have 3 of them in that age room. I've got Tucker and Micah and Cameron, from 22 to 28 years old. And, the Gen Y, Gen Z type of, they're only 35% say that they even have a religious preference or identify with any faith at all. Only 35% of them. And so you can see right away from that is about 22% attend regularly on a Sunday. So how does that kind of segue back into COVID and what the effect that had on us? So if you just start from 2020 and move on, how the pandemic has affected us. Obviously in-person attendance was affected that first year. We were shut down for a little while. But since then, we've kind of been able to keep a steady attendance. But it's definitely impacted it. Studies have shown, and this is another Pew Research study that I'm reading here, about 40% say they've participated in religious services in the prior month, one way or the other, either in person or virtually. So again, that 4 out of 10, 3 out of 10 people, but in this group, this study, they're saying that, 40% have attended some sort of religious gathering at least once a month. And it could have been in person or it could have been online. And so I think what I'm taking from this is a correlation that because of COVID, where we were completely isolated for a while, a lot of us came back together, and still there were some that were still having to watch from home. And so we developed all these systems and technology, and we had it before, but we made it better, right? So a lot of churches have made this live streaming a lot better. Well, because of that, I think there's a tendency of some of those groups to actually think, well, okay, I'm good with watching it online, even though they could be here. I've got I'll call him a cousin. He's a family member out in Waxahachie that he's probably he's about the same age as Joanne, 70 something, and he hasn't been back to church since COVID, and he's just afraid of getting out. I keep talking to him and keep encouraging him to be in the assembly, and he's a devout guy. He loves God. I don't know why he won't go back. And I'm sure there's other people like that are still kind of just don't know. You're just kind of in between. But you wonder, with all of this technology and everything, how much is that playing in onto our in-person attendance and why we're here. And obviously there's reasons why we have that. There's the sick, there's the shut-ins, and those are all good things to have for that technology. But can you really be fulfilled by watching it on TV? I mean, can you really? I remember during COVID, you're watching these. We did some production. We weren't high-end, obviously, but it's like, it just wasn't the same, was it? I mean, nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to kind of watch it at home. But there are some that do it because they don't want to take time to drive up to the building, or they've got something else going on that day, and so they'll use that as a method of kind of eschewing some of the guilt, I guess. So it's a yes and no for me on the whole technology thing. I think it's necessary for some, but I also think it's also kind of a crutch for others. I'll put it that way. So it's just interesting when you start thinking about that. So what are your top 10 reasons or top reasons for missing church? So it's admit your false night. Why do we miss church? Well, Emily, why do you think? Yeah.
Sometimes it's the toddlers.
Yeah, sure. Family. Yeah, little kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised we got here last Sunday. We had Ezra. We had to watch him on Saturday night. And we got here and we were pulling in and Regina and I both looked at each other and yeah, we high-fived each other. It's like, we made it. It's been a while. Yeah. It's kind of an achievement when you get here with a toddler. So what else? Why else do we miss church? No judgment zone. Illness. Yeah, sickness, right. Yeah. Going out of town. You're making trips. I heard work over here. Tiredness, yeah. Definitely. Anything else comes in your mind? Yeah, illness, sickness. Stayed up too late. Stayed up too late. Well, you're just making trips and staying up late. I don't know what's going on in your life. You sound like a teenager.
As Mary and some others know, being in the hospital will make you miss church too.
Yeah, definitely. That's right.
Some will come up with the idea of, oh, this is just as good. I still do it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just as good to hear something online or to watch something on YouTube, right? I heard something.
A number of excuses for not having anything to wear, you know,
Not having something to wear. Yeah. What did you say, Zach? Overslept. Yeah. I think I've had all these excuses.
One of the more damaging reasons is that nobody cares whether I'm there or not.
Yeah. They don't see the importance of it, right? Or you're saying that when you're there, you don't feel like you've been seen, or you don't belong, or
Yeah, because in the listening lab, that was originally just a Sojourner's offer. That was originally developed to try to get people that had quit coming to go find out why and to get them back.
Yeah.
And there's an exercise, an inclusion exercise in the demonstration for that, where you exclude one of the people that's there from a group of three other people. I mean, three people's job is to not let them in. And the person that's being excluded's job is to try to get into the group. And it's interesting in the debriefing afterwards, there are always real feelings created in what is essentially a role-playing exercise.
Yeah.
And so if people have some struggle going on in their life and they feel like nobody in church cares, it'll only take them 6 to 8 weeks before
They will just stop coming. Yeah. They don't see the value in it, right? Yeah. That's a good point.
People don't tell they're going through a struggle or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't share.
and other people know about
Yeah.
it. Don't know what to pray for.
That's right. We got to share too.
you got to get past the, how are you doing today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what Dean preaches on every time I talk to him. We got to get to know each other better. Yeah. So, I mean,
I always ask, is that a church fine or is that a real fine?
right.
Because there is a difference.
Absolutely. Well, I've kind of made a list, and there's a lot of these things you talked about are on this list. But one of the things you didn't talk about was this: I'm not Christian. Yeah. But you know, I kind of struggle with this because, it seems obvious, right? But do you ever look around and say, well, why aren't you at church? You know, you start kind of prejudging people. Do you even know what their background is? Do you know if they have any belief system? Do you know if they're Christian or not? Oh, we don't, unless we actually talk to them about it. And that's one thing I was thinking about. I was like, okay, this is actually a valid kind of excuse. Hey, I'm not even Christian. Why are you judging me? But the point is that the Christian belief is, the Christian numbers have dwindled, especially in Church of Christ over the last, since the 1800s. We've been on a declining model in Christianity for a while now, and we gotta figure out that there's a lot more people in this world that aren't Christians that we can talk to and to invite to church, to attend church, and kind of see what it was all about. So it's just something to think about.
Were those numbers earlier, the 3 out of 10 adults, were those 3 out of 10 adult believers?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it was all across all Christian beliefs. Yeah. But personally, I couldn't find any studies specifically on Church of Christ that were recent, but I would think that, in my experience, probably a lot higher than 3 out of 10 that would be regular attenders. I would think it would probably be more in that 50%. I would hope so.
Well, if you look at the population as a whole, it would be the 3 and 10 is probably right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I did some studies and some lessons, I think it was last year, when I looked at Garland and some of the Richardson areas, and it was amazing to see that when they did surveys, these are government surveys for, I think they said there was only 28% would profess to be a practicing Christian in this area. 28%. Yeah. But when you ask them, do you believe in God? Then you're up in the 55 to 60%. But there's, half of those people don't even come to church.
I've struggled with one that I don't know if it's an example of reasons for missing church. And I don't even believe in divorce. I got 2 of them. And my most former spouse, I've struggled to get her to go, and I still try to talk her into go to church. But I literally think that lady thinks that the church will get struck with lightning, and if she comes in, she's just brought up Church of Christ, but she's ashamed to come in. And I say, that's the exact reason you need to come.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, that's where just like Jack was talking about, you've got people who are hurt and don't feel like they can come for some guilt or whatever reason it is. Yeah. But this point is just saying that we need every Christian in church. So if we need to create more Christians, then let's do that. And the other one is we talked about, I'm sick. That's a valid excuse. It's normal. What we have to be careful though is with this is that it can develop a habit. If you're sick and then you're feeling better, but I'm just not quite there yet, or I'm used to staying at home. That's what we need to watch out for others who are around us. Just to encourage them and say, hey, it's time to come back. Like I talked about my cousin. It's like, hey, I'm trying to encourage him every time I talk to him about get back into church. Get back into church. Gently kind of pushing on that with him. But we need to watch out for that as fellow brothers and sisters, that these faithful members can pick up this habit of irregular attendance pretty easily. And the other one that we didn't really talk about this more as I'm changing. This is the whole, I'm moving, or I got something going on this next few months with the kids, or you've got these life processes going on. And there's, life is a continual process of change, right? You're going to be dealing with something no matter what. Whether it's moving, college, marriage, babies, new jobs, more babies. There's tons of things that are going to get you out of your routines and habits. And then, but that one habit of attending church and being with the brothers and sisters can be something that can be broken pretty quickly. And we usually don't unpack that when we move. Leave it in a box and we'll take our time. We'll get into it when we get there. But we got to be careful of that. Because that can quickly turn into a habit of not attending, which you saw from COVID too. You saw that people got out of the habit, and then so I talked to a lot of people. I was like, well, and I would just literally talk to them, and they would say, I kind of like staying at home on Sunday mornings. And you're just like, okay, you're missing so much, but they're like, but I kind of enjoy my Sunday mornings now with my coffee and just me, and I'll pop open the Bible. And that's good enough. No, it's not. obviously. The other one that I think somebody mentioned was I'm working. So that's another excuse that we have. Unfortunately, business and industry the way it is, it's gotten to the point where it used to be pretty inclusive about Christian observance, and on Sundays, and Sundays are kind of sacred, and Wednesday nights were even sacred at some point. Now, not so much, especially not during the week. The one things we ran into that with a lot was this is more of a sports-based thing, but for a long time with our kids, Wednesday nights were off limits on any kind of little league or baseball or soccer. It was just it wasn't us doing it. It was just society in general. And then we saw as we got further into Cameron and others, it was like all of a sudden Wednesdays was like open game, and we had coaches trying to practice on Wednesday nights and schedule games on Wednesday nights, and we're like, oh, time out, we got somewhere to be. And they're like, where are you going, church? Do you have church on Wednesdays? So there's always that discussion going on. I was like, yeah, we got Bible class. So it's something that the society over the years has changed a little bit. It's interesting though that within corporate America, now there's this inclusivity movement, which is good. I mean, we want to have equal play and we want to have all those kinds of things within there. But one of the things that they're doing is they're allowing people to work remote more often and kind of have flexibility within the family structures. And hey, if you need to be home with the kids or your dog needs to go to the vet, hey, it's cool, just work from the house. Real flexible there. But when it comes to, hey, no, I need to be at church on Wednesday nights, or I have something, well, hold on, no, we need to be up here working. So there's not that give and take that at least I see in my workplace. So unfortunately, it's a little bit more difficult. And providing for the family is a priority. Timothy said that in chapter 5. But we need to make a living. We need to provide for a family. But we also got to provide for a spiritual family as well, our spiritual life. So you got to kind of work that compromise out. And then the other one that we talked about, we didn't actually mention this, is I'm new. I'm a new Christian. And when we're looking at attendance, we've had quite a few baptisms lately with some of these younger guys. We need to be encouraging them to be here, to be continually learning, and that's something that can fall off real quickly as a new Christian. We just need to be encouraging them to be in class, in assembly, in youth gatherings like Tom's doing. And Tom's doing a great job because he's actually sitting down and talking with these guys individually too after they were baptized. So he's kind of helping that transition, which is important. But coming to church regularly is just this acquired habit. And it's developed by the word and example from us as well. But we know it's not automatic with baptism. So all this, they're not going to be here every day. They've got to get used to that. Another excuse might be I'm busy. And there's a difference between I'm working and I'm busy. And one is need and the other is want, right? The busy person is not a bad person, just a busy person. Chapter 4 in Mark, he talks about the sower and the seed, and Jesus described this person who's, concerned with problems and busy getting ahead and busy building a place for himself in this world. And as a consequence, he develops a priority problem, right? So, we just need to make sure that we have the right priority. Busy people don't realize that God has promised that if we put the kingdom first, like church attendance, He will find a better way to provide for us. Interesting quote from J.C. Penney himself. If you're too busy to worship, you're just too busy. Now, this is from a corporate CEO. Of course, it was a few years back, but that was what he was basically preaching to his entire company. Which, God bless him for that. I know there's one other company that comes to mind, the Chick-fil-A, that doesn't open its doors on Sunday. And I may have mentioned this in other classes, but we were working with an airport, and I don't remember where it was, somewhere up in the Northeast. And with a concessions department, and they're trying to woo these companies in, and they're trying to make sure that they have all these leases and stuff in place. And one of the things they're trying to work out was a lease with Chick-fil-A at the airport, which is a big deal because they will make a ton of money and they get a percentage of it. And one of the things the airport was just not budging on was like, we need you open on Sunday. It's a big day for us. And Chick-fil-A was like, sorry? Nope. And they would not sign the lease without that guaranteed amendment on there saying they will not be open on Sundays. And I visited that airport recently on a Sunday, and that place is not open. And it was busy outside, but it was kind of weird seeing this empty shell of a concessions place, but they stuck to their guns on it.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them. And that took a lot of difficulty in there. They are losing out on money on that, but I think they're making up on money on other days because people kind of honor that.
They're fine.
Yeah, they're fine. They've got lines out around the building 3 times. Yeah. But, one of the things I noted here is a person who deliberately makes the time to worship God regularly offers to him something valuable, his time. So rather than being busy, let's give God our time. It's a very important thing. 2 Samuel said this, I refuse to offer God that which has cost me nothing. That's a good thing to remember right there. So another one is I'm hurt. This is what Jack was talking about, and you're talking about. It's like, yeah, I'm hurt. I don't want to come back. I mean, somebody hurt me there, or I disagreed with somebody at church, or had another member that kind of made me feel bad, or didn't agree with the preacher, what he said up there. So there's lots of things that can make people not come back for a while. And, what are you doing there? Are you really making a difference? Are you trying to make a point? I mean, what are we called to do if we have a problem with somebody? Talk to them. Yeah. Go to your brother. So just not coming is not biblical. It's not. And, you need to go and talk to them under that. All you're doing is offending God at that point. So, we can't take it out on God by ignoring Him. That's not the answer. Better that we turn the other cheek with maybe somebody at church and just kind of get past that. We're talking a lot about that in our Sunday morning class, where we're talking about how do you love those that you hate. And there's probably a few that you've had run-ins within the brotherhood. That you're like, oh, I can't stand being around that person. But is that going to make you not come to church and be in the assembly? And that would be really bad. So humbling ourselves sometimes has to happen. We have to humble ourselves, ask one another for help and prayer in times of conflict, just like you were talking about. If we've got something going on in our lives and we're hurting, share it. Come and share. That's another biblical concept, right? It builds trust with each other. It builds spiritual character. I can't think of the words to explain how impressed I am when people come forward in a gathering of others and admit their faults and admit what's going on in their lives and ask for help and guidance and prayer. That is just a huge thing. And so we don't want to take that for granted. When somebody comes forward, whether it's in this type of assembly or it's in a care group or if it's just within a group of brothers and sisters of 3 or 4, man, that sharing, that's hard to do. And that's a huge step for them. And we need to be there for them and just kind of put our arms around them and make sure that we're lifting them up. Or you can be lazy. I mean, we talked about that as being a problem. Laziness is hey, I'm guilty of it sometimes too. Sometimes you just don't want to get out. It's too much work. Requires physical and mental effort to be at church. I have to talk to people. Man, they're going to ask me about my day. Yeah, so there's lots of things that you have to overcome this stuff. So laziness can keep us, so many, from feeding ourselves on a regular basis. So we need to really desire that nurturing and that feeding of the Spirit, enough to be here, enough to get out of bed, enough to get in the car and drive across traffic, and again, impressed by all means by some people who are here that come 30, 40 minutes in rush hour traffic on a Wednesday night. And I just did. Actually, I came from downtown Dallas. Well, it wasn't too bad. I stopped at Chick-fil-A, so I got to rest a little bit. But I've done that where I'm like, I've got to go to church. And by the time you get here, you're worn out because of all the traffic. But when you're here, there's just something. It's hard to describe. It gives you that strength. You walk away at 8 o'clock or 8:30 or sometimes 9 o'clock or 9:30 because you're talking too much, and you're just fulfilled. You're just built up. One other thing is I'm worldly. That's something that's one of the saddest stories if you think about it in Demas, when Paul's talking about his helpers and faithful disciples of the Lord, and he's in in Colossians in chapter 4, he talks about this guy Demas, and he's rocking it. He's just doing a great job. And then all of a sudden in 2 Timothy, it's like flipped. He quotes said, "For Demas, having loved this present world, has deserted me and gone to Thessalonica." He let the world seep into him. And it changed his whole heart, his whole priority. So it's an example that we have of, sometimes people just love the world more than they love Christ. The smell of money, the smell of the sacrifice of praise. They love the activity, the allurements, and the pleasures of the world more than the activities and pleasures and promises of the next, of the world to come. So that's something we need to be always watching for. And John 3:19 says, "This is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men love the darkness rather than the light, for their deeds were evil." Is that us sometimes? Yeah. Sometimes we love the dark. We got to be careful of that. And this is one example that, Satan's number one point of attack, right? It's just to diminish your exposure to God's word and God's people. If he can do that, it's pretty powerful. He separates us. We are not very strong on our own. So that's something to remember. So stay out of that world. And then finally, it's like, I'm blank. There's so many different small excuses that people have. What's your reason for not being there, not being faithful to attendance and services? You may just feel like you're not getting anything out of it. I've had some people that said, I'm not getting filled up. And I'm like, okay, I get that, because I want to be filled up too when I'm here. But sometimes, Regina and I have talked about this. Sometimes you come to fill others up. Sometimes you're here because God needs you here to talk to Jack. Because for some reason, I'm going to be able to talk to him and relate to him, and I'm going to be able to encourage him. And I don't know that until I get here. I don't know that until we're here in the body, in the assembly. So sometimes we need to put ourselves behind. A lot of times we need to do that, actually, right? Get behind because that's really not a justification to not be here. And so those are some of the negative things, and we've got like 7 minutes left, and we're going to talk about some things, why we attend regularly. Like, why do, we've talked about what is this feeling that we've been talking about that we get when we're here, and why do we assemble? The old question, do I have to be there on Wednesday night? There's not a whole bunch of people here. Could be more. I think people are missing out. But the problem is, if you ask that question, then you've already lost the battle. Right? If you're already asking the question, your problem then is that you are lacking in your love and your gratitude and respect for your Lord. And I've been there too. I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else. We deal with that, all deal with that later. But there's a lot of times that we have to just be very careful. And one of the things that we need to remember that when we're here, it pleases God. And that's what we should be here for, is attending and being in the assembly every time pleases Him. Psalm 69 says it this way: I will praise the name of God with song and magnify Him with thanksgiving, and it will please the Lord better than an ox or a young bull with horns and hoofs. I don't really want an ox or a cow or anything like that, but I think the Lord is pleased with that. Praising His name with song and magnifying with thanksgiving. God has always desired that His people gather to worship Him, and they do it often. We all know that. And even in Isaiah has another example. Also the foreigners who join themselves to the Lord to minister to Him and to love the name of the Lord, to be His servants, every one who keeps from profaning the Sabbath and holds fast my covenant, even those I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be acceptable on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all the peoples. So God was very specific about keeping the people true to the day of worship and pleased with those who kept it. You know, even those that weren't part of the true Israelite tribe that they were bringing in. It's like, if you can hold my commandments and you can be here for me, then I will look after you. And in Ephesians, and when we talk about the New Testament, so then don't be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine, for that is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit instead, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs and singing and making melody with your heart to the Lord. That's a beautiful verse. And and sometimes I hear this verse a lot when we're talking about musical instruments and everything else in worship, and it's like, okay, there's arguments back and forth, but just looking at that verse and thinking about why we are here to worship, it's just a great description. And Paul gives us this, just speaking to one another, and like I'm speaking to Jack and others in this. I keep picking on you, Jack, but you've been talking to me. If I'm speaking to you in spiritual songs and singing and making melody with my heart to the Lord, and we're standing beside each other, that can just be the very best feeling. And I can only attribute it to there's certain times that you remember in your head, and some of those are when, like recently when we went to Soul Link with 2,000 of our young kids, and we're all in an assembly together, and everybody's singing to the Lord and raising their hands, and then they're making melody, and it's a beautiful thing, and there's so much energy. And then we come back here, and it's not as much energy, and so there's we got to do something. Well, okay, it's all back on us. First of all, we have to bring that with us. We have to bring that with us, that melody with us. So God desires that we be involved in this type of activity when we're together, rather than pursuing this otherworldly stuff. And then in Hebrews as well, another example. Through Him then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is the fruit of lips, and give thanks to His name. And do not neglect doing good and sharing, for with each sacrifice God is pleased. So God is pleased to see us offering Him praise. So again, it's pretty simple. Praise God. It's the same in the Old and the New Testament. And when we worship Him, we know that we're doing the right thing. We don't have to worry about excuses like those top 10 excuses. We don't have to try and figure out, well, what can I tell people? Just be there. Just be there. But unfortunately, the thing is, the object of worship is to please God, not ourselves. But unfortunately, our sinful flesh would rather please ourselves and make church attendance just convenient and fun and easy and pleasant. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's difficult to get here. Sometimes it's hard to talk to people. Sometimes we have to help people through hard situations. But we are a family. And that's why we're here. And I'm telling you, I haven't had this feeling in other churches because Regina and I were talking about this the other day, and I don't know when this started. Richard, maybe you know, but when did we start doing the circle after a baptism?
Long time ago.
Yeah, just a long time ago. I think, I've been here since, 96. I think we did it then, so it's been, a long time. And that's just a beautiful example and symbol of the community and the fellowship that you have in this type of a church. And it just warms my heart every time we do that.
And just when we gather in His name to study His Word, that we get to know each other and each other's needs, and
Yeah.
the Lord can move through us.
Yeah, I like what you said. The Lord moves through us. Yeah, because we're here, because He can use us. So the second thing that we get is that it strengthens our faith when we're here. If we're not here, it's obviously not going to strengthen our faith. It's pretty simple, Be in the Word, be in the assembly. I was thinking about this today. I wonder if you went back and looked at every single time you were in a Bible class and you counted those up over the years. Like, Mary, how many times have you been in a Bible class? A lot, right? You've been in a lot of Bible classes. If you'd only gone to half of those, would you be the person you are today? No. You've got all of these opportunities in life. And I'm a lifelong learner. I like to learn. I mean, I'd go back and get an MBA if I could, if my wife would let me. But, she's like, why? She hates school. I like learning. So I'm always kind of like learning other stuff and reading. And if I didn't have that experience of being in class and being in worship and listening to sermons and talking to people about my belief and my faith, I would nowhere near be the person I am right now. And God has a plan for every one of us, and He's trying to build us up. And who are we to sit there and say no? I'm just going to sleep in today. Can't do that. We need to understand that He wants us to build our faith. And so in Romans, it says this in Romans 10, so faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the word of Christ. So every time we're in here, we're hearing His word. We are growing leaps and bounds. And that's what you need to take away from every time you're assembling. It's like, I've grown a little bit. Be excited about that. And I'm out of town. I got a lot more stuff on this, but the last thing that I noticed is that your attendance builds the church. It encourages others around you. When you see people there, it gets people excited. It gets, I want to come back again because of the relationships you have with each other. They encourage us on. And that's one of the most important things. So remember that, through a regular attendance at all our services, and this is something that, like I said, this is a struggle that we all have, regular attendance. I mean, if we were here every Sunday and every Wednesday, and I remember the one thing that a deacon at 82nd Indiana Church of Christ in Lubbock, Texas, and I can't remember his name. Regina would know it. Just call him Deacon Bob. We started missing on Wednesday nights because we were newly married and we're going to school, and we're just different priorities. And he called me out one time. He called me on the phone, literally, and called me out and said, Mitch, where are you? This is a Wednesday night, like at 7:30. Where are you? And I was like, I'm at home. He's like, you need to be up here. The doors are open. I was like, yes, sir. Remember it to this day. Mitch, when the doors are open, you need to be in church. You need to be there. You need to be there.
Did you go?
I did the next time. Yes, sir. Yeah, like, yes, ma'am. I was there, and I did not miss another time because every time I was like, I don't want to get called by Deacon Bob again. But, we do this regular attendance. It proclaims Christ to others in the community. It's like, when I'm able to tell people at Little League that I'm going to church on Wednesday night, and that's it. That's a proclamation. We provide an example to others when we're here. And we contribute towards the needs of the saints while we're here. physically and spiritually and financially. And lastly, we support the leadership of the church too. And we have a church for a reason, to build up the saints. And so that, we need to be here as much as possible. So again, it's something we struggle with. And next week, I think we're talking about change, which is another thing that a lot of people have difficulty with, is change and conflict. So hopefully you're back next week, now that we've lectured you on attendance. All right, thank you all. Yeah, I'll call you. I will call you and, I'll come pick you up.